XTC's album, English Settlement. So I guess first I should say that I have a weird copy of this album because English Settlement was a double album, and I had it back in the day, and then eventually, you know, it went the way of my original vinyl collection. And as I was picking up in recent years, you know, finding used copies of albums and sort of rebuilding my collection, I found this one available, and I bought it without even thinking to verify that it was a double album, because this in fact is a single LP, and I had no idea that such a thing existed. There were a couple North American releases which were single LPs and not double LPs. I didn't even think to ask, because why would you? And so there it is. And so this one is missing 5 songs that are on the full album, and those are, for those of you who know this album, Yacht Dance, which I think is a beautiful song, and it's the only one that actually I'm sad about that I don't have on this one. Well, others are okay, but that's the one I really like. Leisure, it's okay song. I think it's just okay. Knuckle Down, Fly on the Wall, and Down in the Cockpit. So those are the ones that didn't make the cut. I don't know what the basis was. I haven't been able to find anything on whose decision it was to take those 5 songs off the album in order to make it fit. No idea. Anyway, a word or two about the cover as well. So the art is amazing. It's got a wonderfully, in the original copy I had, I don't know if you can see, yeah, you can see that where it says XTC English Settlement, the original copy I had, I don't think was actually colored any different than the rest of the album. It was just, you could only read it because of the texture. And then we have this classic prehistoric hill figure, you know, the white horse, which is, you know, several thousands of years old in England. And apparently the American record company didn't like it because they thought it looked like a duck, but the band stuck to their guns. So unlike, you know, John Cougar Mellencamp didn't knuckle under, and so there you go. So XTC is, I think, one of the most English bands. It's something it shares with Jethro Tull, actually, and a few other groups. A very English band. They don't, you know, they sound English when they sing. They're not putting on, you know, an American accents like a lot of British rockers would do over the years. They started out, you know, sort of punky, not really punky, but they were certainly, you know, proto-alternative. Does that make any sense? Or as it would be called now, kind of an indie band. They were not a mainstream rock band in any way, shape, or form. They were a little more cerebral, a little more niche. Again, very English, kind of quirky. And their work becomes more pastoral over time. And I first got to know them through their album Drums and Wires, which has, well, quite a few good songs. But Life Begins at the Hop is one of them. But the main song that actually attracted me to this band in the first place was Making Plans for Nigel, which I thought was, I still think is a great song. And actually I'm still looking for that album. So if anybody wants to sell me one, you know, there you go. So I had listened to that record, and then this one came out in I guess it was probably '82, and I was blown away by it. This is, and it's funny because there's a lot of, you can read reviews of this and say, oh, this is sort of transitional, this is sort of, you know, what have you. I think this is an absolute masterpiece. This to me is in its own way Sgt. Peppersy in its scope. Lots of wonderful songs. Everything that's good about XTC, their Englishness, their lyrics, their playfulness, their wistfulness to socially astute, all of these things are on display in this record. And it's a great listen from start to finish. It's a little bit challenging at points, but only in a good way. And I do find myself regularly humming multiple passages from this album at different points, just sort of popping into my head. So what is the music? So there are tons of excellent tunes on here, and they don't shy away from dealing with challenging themes here either. I mean, the first song, Runaways, is about, you know, domestic abuse, potentially violence, and running away for, you know, kids running away from that environment. The next song, Ball and Chain, is about, you know, kind of trying to resist the tide of this really shitty architectural moment that Britain was having in the late 70s and early 80s. So I guess in some respects, they have something in common with Prince Charles, who was also kind of railing at poor architectural choices as he saw it. Although I'm actually not on the same page as Charlie on that one, but around the same time he had a big campaign about crappy British architecture. Great song. Now the biggest hit on the record, and one that even people who aren't XTC fans are going to know, is Senses Working Overtime, which it was a hit for them, but again there's an anti-singing characteristic, if you're familiar with that term, to their songs, and it's present here too. I mean, it's like the singing is as much sort of Robert Smith, for The Cure, as it is commercially appealing. But nevertheless, that song did very well for them. The next song, which is one of my favorites, I don't know if it was a hit or not, but I really enjoy, is Jason and the Argonauts. The story apparently is that Andy Partridge wanted to. He'd always wanted to write a song about Greek mythology after he heard Tales of Brave Ulysses by Cream, and this was his effort at doing that. Very good. Snowman, I could take or leave, but it's also an integral part of the album. I couldn't imagine the album without that song. It's a very quirky song. It's the finishing track, the last track of the double album. Here it's sort of buried in the middle of this weird album that I have here. Melt the Guns, great tune, a little funky intro. It's a plea to the citizens of the United States to be a little more sensible about firearms. Spoiler, people weren't that receptive to the message, so didn't have the impact they might have been hoping for, but I like it. Then there's No Thugs in Our House, which is, a bit of a generation gap song about parents not really understanding that their kids are racist skinheads, or their boy is, and a little bit of cognitive dissonance there. It's a great song. It's Nearly Africa, which to me is another song which I wanted to mention here, because I think amongst other things, the intro sounds like, if you remember, there used to be a show on CTV in Canada, which was like a nature show. It was always on in the afternoons, kind of filler. It was called Untamed World. And if you can think of the theme song from Untamed World, the opening credits, weirdly this song reminds me totally of that. English Roundabout, another super hummable song. I love that song, and about traffic, right? But it's about exactly what it says on the tin. But a great song, real sort of earworm of a song. And then the closing song on this album is All of a Sudden It's Too Late, which this really is sort of reaching out towards the very pastoral, lyrical, more whimsical stuff they do later, particularly on Skylarking and Oranges and Lemons, two later albums. So again, I'm giving 2/3 of a review because really I've got 2/3 of the album here, but most of the really good songs on the double album are here. The double album itself is great. So a wonderful album, classic, a real pleasure to think about it again and listen to it again and revisit it. And if you haven't heard this record, I completely encourage you to do so. Anyway, there we are, English Settlement.